Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. Today, it's my distinct pleasure to have Seth Greenberg with us. Seth continues to have a career journey unlike anyone else I know, from film school to startup CEOwner to going corporate, including taking companies public as a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. Seth currently works with startups, advising, investing, and pushing founders out of their comfort zones. Seth has been described as a bold risk taker who is both creative and analytical, and I bet you're going to find that out as you listen to this interview. Seth, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Stephan. Great being here. Appreciate it.
We've known each other for quite a while, many, many, many years. We haven't connected until just now for some of those years. It's been a while, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of your origin story with our listener so that they can understand how you ended up traversing these different worlds of startup, corporate, and small business. Just going from film school. How did all that transpire, and why even film school in the first place?
Well, it's an illogical career path. So it's something that I could not have plotted out, which is great because it's exciting and you never know what the next chapter is going to be. And I did start in film school. I went to graduate film school too. I think partly because I'm from Los Angeles. And so it's kind of in the water. It's the company town. And it also allowed me to really flex, explore my creative side as well. And going to film school, even in high school, I subscribed to Variety and Hollywood Reporter, and I remember like reading it backwards, almost like the Torah or something, the Bible. You're reading it backwards because they had the society pages in there, so they had pictures at the end of the Variety and Hollywood Reporter. And the pictures would be people, industry people at Laker games. And so my parents had some tickets to Laker games and I would go with them and I wouldn't watch the game. I would be looking around and I'd be saying, even once I even brought the newspaper with me to see, oh, that's Mike Ovitz. Oh, that's Michael Eisner, and just like watch how the industry worked at halftime and during the games and stuff like that. And I was very interested in the business side of it as well as the creative side of it. So the early parts of my career was exploring that. Film school, graduate film school. I worked on a couple productions at Paramount, and then I went to the agency side of things. And just like in Entourage, I was in the mailroom, and I say that I was a Lloyd, if you're watching Entourage, and then I became an Ari. So I became an agent representing writers and directors, and I worked at some pretty big agencies. And really, the first part of my career was exploring what my ceiling was and what my place was in that world.
I haven't seen that show. Is that good?
It really is about the toxicity of the entertainment industry. It's about, a lot of screaming and passionate folks who are very ambitious. And, that's what you will get when you're in a mailroom where the person on your left is a Harvard law grad and the person on your right, has his or her own big aspirations. And you get a break because one of the partners at the agency has asked you to clean up after their dog, that they brought to work. And that's a good day. And I'm not like disparaging it. I'm just saying that there's a lot of roll up your sleeves, can-do attitude, and it definitely humbles you and it weeds out people that don't want to work their way up.
Yeah, gotcha. And have you seen the show Mad Men? I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things about it. How would Entourage compare with Mad Men?
So Mad Men is awesome. I love it. And what I love about Mad Men, it really gets into the psychology of marketing, the behavioral economics, like the carousel episode. It's really about connecting as a marketer with what makes people tick. And
the carousel episode, you're talking about the one where whoever that character is, one of the big ad guys. He's going
Don
through
Draper.
slides.
Yes. Yeah, Don Draper. It's I think he called it a time machine. And
Yeah.
it's an emotional time machine as he was pitching it to the Kodak people. And yes, that was the carousel episode, and that's a perfect episode for a marketer to watch to show how to make an emotional connection in a TV ad.
Yeah, I'm gonna add, or I'll have my team add the YouTube clip of that as an embed to
Awesome. I love it.
this episode's show notes page. Yeah, cool. And so the agency world is very different from the client side experience. So maybe you could juxtapose those two. And while you're doing that, if you could also maybe share uh, maybe an example or a resource that has been inspirational and helpful for you on both sides. For example, with the agency side, it might be Ogilvy on advertising. Like, oh, incredible book! It's made such a difference in my life from that agency side, and then in the corporate world, I don't know, some other book or resource or a mentor or something like that. That would be helpful too.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind from the old days in the entertainment industry is a book that the late William Goldman wrote, and he's a screenwriter. It's called Adventures in the Screen Trade. And the one liner that really comes out of it is nobody knows nothing. And that means that the people that greenlight the scripts, that produce the scripts, that directors, like nobody really knows what's going to work and what isn't, even though it's big on tent poles now, and meaning Marvel sequels and things like that. But that's the book that every screenwriter reads. Early on, I think uh, when you asked a minute ago about my experience there, I just think that, like, from being an agent, and you were very intuitive in terms of like your question, because it is quite different wearing a suit and tie and representing creatives as opposed to being a creative. And I think that that's one of the things that I learned, even though at graduate film school, I went to undergrad at Loyola Marymount, and I went to graduate school at American Film Institute. And I was very fortunate to get in there. And I was a producing fellow there. And one of the things that they taught us was meet everybody, get in the agency world if you can, and just like be a sponge, make connections. And so when I was successful and I did that, I put several years, 5 years into that of my career. Um, I realized that I was quite envious of my clients, because I would sell a screenplay. I'd be representing a screenplay by a first time writer, as an example, and would be able to sell it. I sold one for $1.4 million on her behalf, first time writer. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can write just as shitty a screenplay as I just sold, but I'm the guy in the monkey suit. And I was always envious of my clients. And I decided after a while that I better go on the other side of this. You only have one life. And I left being on the sales side and went over to the creative side. And I wrote about 20 different screenplays and TV treatments and things like that, and had my hand at that side. And I was never either talented and or lucky enough to win that lottery. But I don't regret moving over to the creative side, because it's definitely a great part of what has shaped my career even today.
And then,
Yeah, and I basically left off by telling a story about moving from the business side to the creative side, and that it has suited me well to this day. So I was not talented or lucky enough to have that $1 million screenplay sale. I did option several of them, and went through that process of trying to get these screenplays made. But that's when the internet came along. And so I figured that I've taken enough swings at the entertainment industry, because the internet had no nepotism, it had no barrier of entry, and however hard you're going to work is how high you can ascend in the early days of the internet. You would appreciate this more than anyone, Stephan. I actually left the equity that I built up in the entertainment industry to join a startup in Los Angeles called Word of Net. And I was employee number one of a company whose mission was to do search engine optimization.
And when was this?
This was well, I'll marry that with the types of search engines that were out there. It was Alta Vista, it was Lycos, it was Hotbot, it was Dogpile. I mean, these are names that probably most of your audience don't even know pre-Google. So this was in early 2000s.
Yep. Got it. All right, cool. And then on the startup side, you said you're employee number one. How big did that company get? And then what happened that led you to becoming chief marketing officer at Intuit?
Well, yeah, and it's not something that is just explained in one sentence because what Word of Net did was during the day I would be a salesperson, and at night I would be basically in the lab figuring out title tags and alt text and things, content code and links and things that you're an expert at. But we would have this tool that we created called the visibility index, where we would make that public and free, and any website, anybody could put any URL in there and see how popular their rankings were and what page they were on. And it was really like a door opener. And so that company was, it didn't get huge. It was basically a services company. It did well. It did really well because we were selling something early on. We were pioneers, going to CBS Records and saying, we can get you the single keyword Madonna. We can get you ranked in the top 3 on page 1. Like you can promise that type of stuff early on because there wasn't a lot of competition for doing that. But at the same time, so I worked there. I worked at 4 different startups over the course of 2 years. And the last startup that I worked at of those 4, again in LA, was a company that raised $50 million of venture capital and was disrupting the corner hobby shop because there's no national chain of hobby shops. And so it's fragmented. And so the company was called eHobbies. I got hired we had 200 employees. I got hired to run marketing. So this was the chance for me to actually get out of the sales side and into the marketing side. And marketing is sales too, obviously, but a little bit more creative too. And I ran that for 2 years. And in 2001, during the dot-com bust, I got laid off on a Monday. And then on a Tuesday, I bought the company. And so I then changed the business model and ran that for 5 years profitably. That was amazing. I had to use everything that I learned up until that, all the creative skills to all the to get noticed, all the SEO skills. I was a pretty big proponent of link share and affiliate marketing, Be Free at the time. I was pretty big advocate for from the business side, from ensuring that that our cost of goods was aligned, that we weren't just trying to get customers, that every order was profitable. I remember I would have these conversations with my wife, and we just had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old when I was there. I call myself the CEOwner, as you said in the opening. That I say, how would you feel about me? How would you feel about us mortgaging our house? And this would be a twice-a-year conversation. If we take out a few $100,000 from our house, then I can go to China and buy these hobby products directly from a manufacturer as opposed through distribution here domestically. And that means that we would get 70% off instead of like 35% off. And she said, look, just don't lose the house, that's fine. And I never lost the house, but that really shaped my risk tolerance and appetite, especially as I moved on. And so eHobbies was a chapter in my career that I used every trick in my book and more that I learned, including advocating as the little guy to get on the board of shop.org, which is part of the National Retail Federation, which has the largest e-commerce companies in the world and little eHobbies here. So I was at the table with, Gap and Home Depot and people that I still know and appreciate to this day. It's like one of these things doesn't belong with the other. That was me, but I was able to advocate to get on that board, and that helped me with biz dev and a lot of great things. And then it was time to move on. So doing eHobbies for 7 years, we're talking 2006. I realized that my manufacturers, my supply chain was now competing against me. So whether it was Mattel or Estes Rockets or Lionel Trains, I realized that they now feel that there's no such thing as channel conflict, that they can open up a direct to consumer website and sell directly. And obviously their cost of goods is, pretty low. And that's when I decided to take advantage of an opportunity and sell my business. And I took a little bit of time off and said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I do know that I have e-commerce experience. And it turns out that at that time, 2006, that was a great time to have e-commerce experience. So I was able to have about 20 different interviews around the country, and I ended up at Intuit. And that was, again, one of these things is not like the other. Intuit could not crack the code. And Intuit is the maker of TurboTax and QuickBooks. They couldn't crack the code on digital marketing. They were a company full of consumer packaged goods folks, Procter and Gamble, et cetera. And I came in here like a bull in a china shop. And, when they interviewed me, they took a chance on me because I was very rough around the edges, and I took a chance on them because I didn't know what acronyms were. I didn't know how to do marketing speak, and it worked out. It worked out amazingly.
Yeah, and one thing I remember from your days at Intuit was this really clever campaign on the TurboTax side. It was the tax wrap. And I just loved what you pulled off there. Was that your idea to get Vanilla Ice to MC this contest and be the face and the voice of of TurboTax for that period of time, to talk about rapping about your taxes and put in your video entry for this competition to see if you could win what was it, like $25,000 or something like that?
Yeah, you got a good memory because that is an oldie but a goodie. The tax wrap really was born out of my collaboration with these two guys, Jason and Nick at an agency that we were using at a time. They're at Collier Simon right now, so it's Nick and Jason from Collier Simon. But the three of us got along so well that we realized soon that I wasn't your typical client. I'm like an agency's best client and their biggest pain in the ass too sometimes, because I do have a creative need and bent, and so I get into the creative side of things, and so sometimes agencies don't like that and sometimes they love it. But what I do promise an agency is that they do have a client that is not afraid to get fired. And so that's kind of a bold statement. And I've said it time and time again, hundreds of times in front of my teams along the way. And you can see from my journey, if I'm mortgaging my house and my neck is on the line because, I'm getting products imported from China and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to sell them or not, that's quite riskier than working it into it and trying to do some breakthrough things. And I got lucky, and early on I hit some big wins. And the tax wrap, just a quick story on the tax wrap is when we come up with some of these ideas that I just know, because marketing is part gut, I just know that it's going to be something special. I can't sleep at night. I just can't wait. And so when I pitched my boss about the tax wrap, the way that I framed it was there's a huge amount of interest on YouTube right now, and we don't really have a place on YouTube. And so I said to my boss, would you be open to us having a contest on YouTube? He's like, sure, not a problem. And I said, well, before you approve this, I just want to let you know what you're getting into. We're going to have a contest about taxes, and we're going to have consumers rap about taxes. He's like, oh, great. And I said, and we're even going to hire Vanilla Ice to represent our brand. He's like, wait a second. And he didn't say yes. And I said, and he's a 25-year veteran of Procter & Gamble, very conservative guy, who hired me, took a chance because I wasn't like him or anyone else, and recognized that. And I said, so you're not going to say yes? Why'd you hire me? And he's like, I'm not saying no. I said, so what are you saying? He said, well, what I'm saying is that you're going to fly up to Mountain View and you're going to pitch this to Scott Cook. And Scott Cook is the founder of Intuit, right? And so that became like a pretty funny, it wasn't the first time that he didn't say yes. And it wasn't the first time he said, you're going to fly up to Mountain View and sit down with Scott Cook. So I got to know Scott quite well. And when I pitched Scott the TurboTax wrap, he basically paused and said, VI, where's he been all these years? Yes, go for it. And so that was just a really fun, the reason why I positioned it the way we did was I knew that brands get flamed in comments on YouTube. And if we make fun of ourselves before anyone can make fun of us, we've already circumvented that part of the conversation. And it shows that Intuit has a personality and it has a tone that resonates with the next generation of tax software payers and users. And so that worked really well. And after that, the thing is, in a company at the time, we might have had like 6,000 employees. This set the record for comments in the intranet of Intuit. Half of them wanted this new guy fired, and the other half thought that it was the most genius thing that they've ever seen. So once you have something polarizing like that, you're on to something. And then, the next time I capitalized on you better fly up to go to Mountain View and pitch this to Scott was not like a gimmicky campaign. It was when I suggested and decided, and I was the champion of this. And that's what vendors need. They need champions at these companies to beta test and prototype and be pioneers if that's what makes you tick. And that's what makes me tick. So I championed the fact that I really disdain testimonials on websites, and those are hard coded and they're not very authentic. And that's when a company called Bizarre Voice was bubbling up, and I met them, and I was just enamored with the fact that real customer reviews and real word of mouth is your most powerful persuasive way to sell. And I got behind them and I championed that vendor, and so much so that I was willing to get fired over it. And it turns out, there's several amazing things that you get when you have your customers being able to provide reviews. You get better search engine optimization juice. You get better content. You get ways to filter these reviews and then segment and go out and target outside on other websites based on the subject matter of the reviews and the topics and stuff like that. So those are just a couple examples of me being bold and trying to take risks. And again, I had to go up and pitch Scott the idea of putting reviews on. And the one thing he said to me was, I'm going to approve this, but make sure you don't game the system. Make sure that you show the bad reviews just as much as you show the good reviews. And this is the founder of Intuit saying that. And he was subsequently interviewed on the cover story of the Harvard Business Journal about social and how companies use social. So
you said you were willing to get fired over, but you didn't get fired over, right?
I've never gotten fired over anything. Although one time, if we're going to jump around, I did position in a more recent company that I worked at called Alteryx, and I helped take this company public, and I was the CMO. We did have an annual customer event. It was awesome, and we called it Alteryx Inspire, and so I had him wear a T-shirt, which was a rally cry that our salespeople really got a lot of love from at our booths and stuff like that. And it says total analytics. It said total analytics badass, something like that. That's what the T-shirt said, and so it said total analytics badassery. That's what it was. Total analytics badassery. And people would go flock to our booths to see, what does that phrase mean? So he was wearing a T-shirt in front of 4,000 people at the time that said total analytics badassery. And right before he got on stage, he threw on his sport coat, and then he's on stage and he's doing his 45-minute pitch, and he's like attacking the stage and going side to side. And then I'm like, holy shit, oh my God. And I realized, like the back cover of the old Mad magazines, that when you fold that back cover in, it makes a different message. When you put a sport coat over a T-shirt that says total analytics badassery, it ends up saying anal ass. And so for 45 minutes, I had the founder of a public company roaming around the stage saying anal ass. And it was like, I was surprised. I should have gotten fired over that one. So.
Oh my goodness. Oopsie. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so let's go back to Intuit for a bit here. I'd love to unpack how you were able to pull this thing together that was just so innovative at the time that really could have been done by anybody, not just Intuit. It seems like maybe pie in the sky to get somebody with such name recognition as Vanilla Ice to MC a contest, but actually it was quite affordable, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was at home with my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old on a Sunday, I believe it was, back when we were just launched that campaign, and someone from Intuit called me and said, "Are you at home?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, you better turn on CNN." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Because they're going to do a story next on the tax wrap." And I said to my wife, because we moved from LA to San Diego, I said, "We're going to find out in the next 2 minutes whether we're moving back to LA or not, because I have no idea what they're going to report on the tax wrap on CNN about the tax wrap." And Ali Velshi, who's the reporter at the time, he said, he looked in the camera, and actually he was sitting next to a co-anchor, and said, "You're not going to believe this, but a 20-year-old conservative company, Intuit, they just hired Vanilla Ice to represent their brand, and he's doing something called the tax wrap." And the woman next to Ali Velshi said, "Where do they find him? At a Motel 6? And so I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to go well for us. And so Ali Velshi, they like zoomed in on him, and he says, "Well, Intuit, I'm going to tell you what I think about this campaign right now." And then he says, "I think this is a brilliant campaign." And he says, "So much so that I am entering your contest right now on live TV." And he gets out a piece of paper and he starts rapping live on CNN. And so the next day, my boss calls me into his boss's office, the general manager, and he says, "Seth, we never could imagine that we could break through with pop culture like what you've helped us do. You have definitely exponentially accelerated how we engage with the market that we want to. Keep doing what you're doing." And so, we then got on Saturday Night Live and all these other types of things. And it really helped with my brand at Intuit. And so I was known. I don't know if I was known as a crazy guy, but I was known as a bold guy that was not afraid to take risks. So much so that I would then start working with other business units and just to accelerate that story because there were so many big wins, and it really helped accelerate TurboTax out of the your father's software, your father's tax software, and really helped with market share. And we became over a $1 billion business unit, and it was fantastic. And along the way, I had realized that when I grow up, I wanted to be a CMO, but being on the digital side of things and being in San Diego was limiting because my friends on the offline side, the brand side, they weren't going anywhere. Who's going to leave San Diego? And so at one point, because I was an Intuit for 7 years, at one point I went to our CEO and said, if ever given the opportunity to learn the offline side, and I knew the offline side, but I didn't have the responsibility for it, I would be willing to relocate. And obviously I talked to my family about this. And then about a month later, Brad Smith calls me up and says, careful what you wish for, Greenberg. I know you like to get out of your comfort zone. We're going to fly you up here. You're going to relocate to the mothership, and you're going to lead brand and advertising and social media for QuickBooks. And that's our $2.5 billion brand. And so we moved to the Bay Area. I spent 5 years in the Bay Area. And the first year at Intuit was probably the biggest risk that Intuit ever took in marketing, which was, again, born from ideation, kind of designed for delight, where you go broad and you go narrow, and you're trying to figure out what did I learn as a newbie to small business? What are some of the insights? Because I saw hundreds of insights that our research department had, and I'm like, how can I impact and affect to not incrementally but exponentially grow market share in a low single digit growth business? And there were a few insights that really resonated with me, and two specifically was that small businesses yearn to be heard. They yearn to have a voice. They're not on the evening news. They're not in the Fortune 500. And the other insight that really resonated with me was that small businesses did not think that Intuit cared about them. And so we took those two insights and we basically locked ourselves in a lab, and we came up with a whole bunch of different ideas. And when I came up with, we came up with one that resonated, I pitched it to my boss, and my boss loved it and said, I can't approve this. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to having such bold ideas that my boss can't approve. And my boss said, I want you to pitch this to Brad Smith, our CEO. I said, absolutely. And so what I did in that specific instance was I got on Brad's calendar for a week later or whatever, and my boss was going to be with me. And I decided to call Brad, even though I was on his calendar. And so I called him and I said, hey, Brad, I'm on your calendar for next week, and I just want to let you know. He's like, hold on a sec. He's like, yep, confirmed. Looking forward to it, buddy. See you next week. I said, wait. Before you hang up, I just want to let you know what to expect. He's like, okay. I said, when I pitch you this idea based on these two insights that I learned as a newbie to small business, you're going to consider throwing me out of your office. But if you listen to me after 5 minutes, you're going to be intrigued. After 20 minutes, you're going to can't wait to see this come to life. So much so that I predict that a week from tonight, you're going to be talking to your wife about what this crazy guy Greenberg brought in, and really motivated and so excited to see this come to life. He's like, wow, you really got me interested in this. And the reason why I did this, Stephan, was because we were at the time growing globally, and we were also acquiring other companies, and he had a lot on his plate. But I definitely wanted him to highlight that one meeting on the calendar. And so that meeting came, that day came, and I couldn't wait for it. And not after 5 or 10 minutes, but after 2 minutes, I'm pitching him this idea, and he goes, "Holy shit!" And after I was done, it took 20 minutes, not 1 hour. Brad says to me, "I've been doing this for 20 years. This is the best idea I have ever heard. Approved." And so that was amazing. And
good for you.
it
And
would
what
be
a
cool for me
clever
not to
way
share.
to persuade, to have that phone call a week ahead of time with him. So good.
Yeah, and it would be cruel for your audience for me not to say what it was, and I'm happy to share,
Yeah, please.
the 1 minute pitch, which was uh, that these, small businesses don't think Intuit cares, and small businesses need a voice. And so, what I propose is the largest social media platform. It's not a campaign. It's more durable that's ever happened before. If we do this right, small businesses will all have a voice, and if we do this right, small businesses will end up loving Intuit. And it starts out as a social campaign. And I also pointed out that in Intuit's 20-year history, they have never had a Super Bowl spot. And you're talking about a $4 billion company that has the resources to have a Super Bowl spot, but they never had the stomach or reason to. I said, for the first time, so we go through this campaign and we let the public vote on which small businesses resonate and get the most votes. And we let the public vote. And then at one point, when we want to get to the final 100, we let our employees vote. And then when we have the final 100, from the employees, they narrow it down to 4. And then the public votes again for the winner. And for the first time in Intuit, and for the first time in Super Bowl advertising history, we actually buy a spot for the big game, not for Intuit, but we award that spot to the winning small business, and they're the ones that are highlighted, not us. And we might have a tag at the end, brought to you by Intuit, but it's not a product placement spot, and it's called Small Business Big Game, and that was the idea that he loved, and we got it approved, and that was an amazing campaign that had multiple lives. It's funny because not only did that campaign work, and I can send you a link that you can put on there that shows all of the buzz and media that it far surpassed all the KPIs that we had into it. But when I left Intuit, because I was recruited pretty heavily during this time, I left to become the first public CMO of LifeLock. So I got that title, that aspiration, that career goal that I was looking for. But my friends at Intuit called me the next year and said, "Seth, you're going to be thrilled." I said, "Why?" They said that your baby is still here. We're going to do a Small Business Big Game Part 2. Mm-hmm. And my reaction was, "Oh, that's great. Thanks for letting me know." But actually, I was quite disappointed and bummed that they decided to do that, because it's already been done. It's never been done before. It's not a pioneering, bold move. The company has now gone back to safe moves. And I would have done something else with those resources, not just a Part 2. But, they didn't have somebody that was willing to get fired over something after I left in that department.
Gotcha. Wow, what a great idea. How did these incredible, like, out of the box ideas come to you? Do you have some sort of I don't know, meditation that draws down the light, and then these flashes of brilliance just appear in front of your eyes, or what?
Well, so I am wearing my thinking cap, so that helps sometimes. I would say, Stephan, that I'm a victim of my own mind. It's always on. Like, I'm always telling the stupidest jokes. I'm like a punster. I just go through life trying, digesting things and seeing things in ways that others don't. Like, if you look at my Twitter account, I describe myself as a sit down comedian, right? And so I just think different, I guess, as the cliche goes. But I have, as I say up front, I steep things into what end. So unlike a lot of creatives at some agencies who just want to do the craziest stunt marketing, I always think about who are we trying to engage, how are we going to measure this, and what is the means that we're going to get their attention. And so sometimes it's with humor, either make you laugh or make you cry. That's like what they say in marketing to engage folks. But I just think that it's one of the um, uh, benefits and curses that I have because I can't turn it off, and I'm always thinking about ideation, and even in my spare time have a hobby with a buddy of mine called like dumb movie titles. And anyway, so dumb movie titles are one type of thing, but to answer your question, it's just like something that is the creative. It's what makes me tick, So
Yeah, yeah. So you're kind of wired that way, and funny when you're saying that, it's like a curse. You can't turn it off. What my
right.
mind immediately went to is, I have another podcast called Get Yourself Optimized, which is not about SEO at all. It's about biohacking, life hacking, and personal development and spirituality. And I've interviewed some psychics, and some of them have said, like, it's felt like a curse a lot of my life where I can't turn it off. And then these, like, it's just like an open portal where they can show up and like try and get my help to get some message across to this side of the veil. And like, so that's completely unrelated to what you're describing, but that's what popped for me when you're talking. Like, some psychics don't really enjoy that gift. It's hard to get those kind of visions and stuff.
Well, I think that like songwriters have the gift and screenwriters have the gift. It's like it's just something that it's a voice that speaks to you that is hard to turn off. And so sometimes, like, I have a blog and it's called Thinking Out Loud, and that's not always a good thing, but that's how I'm wired.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't gotten you fired yet, so that's cool.
Not yet.
And you know what? If that's the measuring stick, it doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to matter in the long run if you get fired or not fired. If what you're doing is revealing light and making people feel good and inspiring them and making the world a better place. So I just think focus on your eye on the prize, on the bigger prize, and whether you get fired or not fired is at the end of the day inconsequential. It might sound like a big consequence, but
oh yeah,
you'll be looked after. That's kind of the law of the universe, I think.
I do remember the dumb movie title, and it's called Oxymoron, and the tagline is "Somebody's got to be the dumbest guy at Oxford."
So. That is clever. I like that.
So if you're grading on a curve, there is somebody at the bottom of the curve that goes Oxford, right? So he or she is the oxymoron, and you can get, in the old days, you'd get Pauly Shore to be in it or something like that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, you are a very good sit down comedian. So I know we're coming up to time here, but I'm curious to hear. Why is it that CMOs don't tend to last? So you were a CMO at Alteryx, and you've done all these amazing things. I'm sure you're very tapped into the industry generally as well, and not just in your niches and your experiences. So it seems like a CMO might only have a year-long gig, and then they're moving on. So what's up with that?
It's easy to fire the coach than the team, and CMO is definitely a high visibility role that is really there to create the flywheel for sales enablement, for culture, um, for ensuring that quarterly goals are exceeded, investor relations. It really is an amazing job. And there's a lot of folks that don't give CMOs any leeway or rope. And I'm reading a book right now called Tinderbox, which is the history of HBO. Andrew Miller wrote it. He also wrote the history of ESPN and the history of Saturday Night Live. And I love all those products or brands.
Mm-hmm.
And HBO lost money for the first 7 years. It lost money for the first 7 years, and in year 8, they started becoming a cash cow. But I don't see a lot of leeway these days to and an appetite for to nurture things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not giving you any kind of novel answer here, Stephan, but I definitely experienced it, and I've been invited to leave, as well too. So it's when you are asked to leave, when you're fired, you really hope that the company has two things for you, which is respect and dignity. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and sometimes the company culture is about it should be about three constituents. It should be about customers, shareholders, and employees in a healthy balance. And I've worked at companies who's focused on shareholders, and it always comes back, to either bite you, or it just reveals what the company culture is. And I've worked at companies that were unbelievable, amazing places to work, and I've worked at companies that were shit shows, and I've worked at some that were in between. But you have to figure out what's right for you, and what you're willing to tolerate, and what you thrive in, and take it from there.
Yeah. Reminds me of something I learned from a friend of mine who was my first client, Gene Wright. He was at Seton and Seton Nameplate and Brady Corporation, and he was my first big client. And he told me, either you got your face to the company, or not me specifically, but if you got your face to your company, then you have your butt to your customer. Turn around and face your customer. You put your butt to your company, and you may lose your job over it, but it'll be worth it.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So, do you have a couple more minutes? I have.
Yeah, we can keep going on.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so let's keep going.
Okay, because sure. We had some technical difficulties at the beginning.
It's fine.
That got us started late.
No worries.
Okay, cool. I would love to hear a little bit more about how you ended up going from the head of marketing at eHobbies to the owner in a day, like getting laid off on Monday and then buy the company on Tuesday. That reminds me of like the Remington ads. I loved Remington so much I bought the company. So how the heck did that come about? Did you just share a little more insight into that?
So everyone's experience can help inform and does inform their current and future opportunities. My experience in the entertainment industry as an agent, which I didn't love, helped me with negotiations. My creativity helped me with trying to think outside the box. When I got laid off, I decided that I felt like there's no one that knows how to position and sell eHobbies better than me. And so I went to the company then was being sold for parts, and it was an ABC, assignment for benefit of creditors. And so there was this one chop shop. It's like a digital repo man, and they were representing at the time. Remember, this was during the .com bust, so it was like Christmas for them, because they were getting all these new failed .coms to liquidate, like pets.com, the sock puppet. They were getting Webvan, and eHobbies was on that pile. So this guy was very busy, and I met with this guy who was running this company that was liquidating these companies. And I said to him, look, I know you're trying to get 10 cents on the dollar. I want to make you an offer if you stop trying to sell the parts of eHobbies immediately. I want to make you an offer for 25 cents on the dollar. So I basically, 2.5x of what he would get. So I definitely got his attention, and had several meetings with him, spent a lot of time figuring out what the value of the assets were. And when we agreed to what the value of the assets were discounted at 25 cents on the dollar, I realized that it was about $3 million. And so I said to him, this is what I think the value is. Do you agree? And he looked at it. He looked at my logic, and he said, I do agree. And he said, so I'm going to license. No, he said, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to transfer these assets over to you, and you're going to transfer me over $3 million. And I said, that sounds great. So he stuck out his hand, and I said, I shook it, and I said, happy to. I just have one little problem. He's like, what's that? I said, I don't have $3 million. I said, but I do have an idea. I do have a plan. Remember, you're going to get 2.5x this. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's all pissed off because his phone's not stopping ringing and all this kind of stuff. And I said, you're going to license this to me, and I'm going to pay you every month for 3 years, divided by $3 million. And I said, remember, you're going to get 2.5x for doing this with me. And he's thinking about this. He's like, you know what? I've never done this before. That's an interesting creative idea. You're going to be my guinea pig. I'm going to agree to this, but you're not going to pay me monthly. You're going to pay me weekly over 2 years. And I stuck out my hand. I said, you got a deal. And that's how I got eHobbies. And part of what I did was I got all these assets. The first thing I did was I had a sale for Aeron chairs, Herman Miller chairs. And I was able to get like 80 of them. And so I'm starting to like make a lot of money here and pay down, pay this off. And we had one of the domains was NPO, because eHobbies acquired a company called Next Planet Over, which was a comic book company. So they had the npo.com, which is a 3-letter domain. So I auctioned that off, made a lot of money. So I'm basically, taking care of efficiencies. And basically what happened was we were doing so well, and I launched with not 200 employees, but like 7 employees on Yahoo Store, on eBay, on Amazon Z Shops. And we didn't need people. We didn't need Pandesic or Microsoft Commerce Server 2000. We didn't need that. There were already people. Why reinvent the wheel when the wheel's there? And so we did quite well. And I went back to him and I said, look, let's renegotiate our deal. We don't need to wait 2 years to pay you off. Let me pay you off after 1 year, and let's sweeten the deal for my incentive to do that. And he agreed. And so I got him out of my life, and I was unencumbered, with that, with the business. And so that was the story of me acquiring eHobbies.
Wow. You're not only super creative, you're quite the deal maker too. It's really impressive.
Thanks. I learned it from my dad, because when I was like in junior high, I just remember my dad was buying me for my birthday a drum set, which I'm sure he dreaded the day after he bought that for me. And I'm in the garage just making a lot of noise because I'm not very talented with drums. But we're in a music store, and my dad ended the negotiation. I didn't even know you can negotiate in a music store. And I'm sitting there watching my dad, and he says, okay, throw in a pair of drumsticks and you've got a deal. And so I almost end every negotiation I have by saying, throw in a pair of drumsticks and you have a deal. And they're staring at me like, what the hell is Greenberg talking about? It's totally an inside joke, only for me. It's not funny for anybody else.
Well, and your dad.
Right. That's true.
Oh, that's awesome. And so if our listener or viewer would like to work with you, because you do work with founders and and startups and so forth, if they can afford you, right? So how do they do that?
Well, I'm kind of cheap because I'm fortunately in a place where I usually I limit myself to 5 or 6 companies at a time. And scarcity is a good marketing tactic too, right? Because people then they want to be one of those 5 or 6. But I generally work with startups and meet with the founders, and I'm kind of like the founder whisperer now. And so I've made so many mistakes in my career that I can kind of like help them shortcut and not step in the same landmines that I've done. And really, it's more than marketing. It's what are the business goals? What are the founders' goals? How are they going to create a company that they're so proud of, including culture, that are it's like an amazing stop in all of the employees' career journeys. How are they going to do something that their customers can't imagine going back to the original way of doing things before they've learned about this new product or service? And I generally meet with these early stage companies, and we'll decide whether I'm right. And one of the ways we decide whether I'm right is sometimes I will be a consultant for them, and I'll work for them like for a month, maybe full time, doing specific projects. And then we'll get to know each other. I'll then, if it works out, they might, so instead of me getting paid, which I can, we've already negotiated, I might say, I really believe in you guys. I actually want to take this money that you're about to pay me. I want to actually add money to it. And if you're willing, I'd like to invest in your company. And a lot of times they want me to be an advisor as well. So I then get advisor options. And so that's kind of like the model that I've done. And I'm really excited to work with so many different types of startups. And I just I can't imagine when I was in high school with Daily Variety and Hollywood Reporter that I'd be sitting here talking to you and your audience about the fact that I'm working with these tech startups, and my career has satisfied every single creative need that I could have ever imagined, even though I never got like a screenplay on the screen. So
awesome. Well, what's your website and social channels so our listener can follow you?
yeah, it's SethGreenberg.com, so that's easy. And on Twitter, it's Seth G. And so LinkedIn, anyone can find me, and they can see a lot of the things that I talked about. I have a lot of links to videos and things like that, and they can see the companies that not all of them are up there, but some of the ones that I'm really excited to be with are up there that I've invested in or advised. And I'm always happy to network. I love networking, and just passionate. I'm just passionate about what I'm doing here as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it comes through for sure. And I hope some of that passion is contagious to our listeners, and they're going to come up with some crazy, brilliant new strategy for their own businesses, their own marketing initiatives. And
don't be afraid to get fired, right?
That's right. And especially if it's your own company, right? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Seth. Thank you, listener. And we will catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.